Hello and thanks for joining us on Relational Practice, a social work podcast. I'm Dr. Jodie Park.
I'm Rose Mackey.
We're both private practice social workers here in New South Wales, Australia, working in the fields of child protection and home care and trauma.
And today we're recording this episode on Dynamic.
Thank you for listening to us. We'd love, if you like listening to us, we would love for you to subscribe, rate and review our podcast and connect with us on Facebook, Instagram and via our new YouTube page. Really, if you could just take a couple of minutes just to rate and review, that would be amazing for us because that's how other people get to hear us.
And as always, if you've got any questions, comments, stories, or anything you want us to talk about, please email us at relationalpractice01@gmail.com.
Yeah, cool. I think for those of you who have listened to us from the beginning, you kind of know how we talk about stuff. So if our style of chatting would suit a topic area that you're interested in, please let us know.
Yeah, we'd be very keen.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Today we're going to talk about the Dynamic-Maturational Model of Attachment and Adaptation.
DMM for short.
Yeah, we're going to call it DMM model for short. I'm really scared about this topic.
I like it. You're scared.
Do you like it because you had to do polyvagal?
Yes.
The polyvagal one was really good though.
Oh, I hope it was.
It was
somewhat
really good. It was good, and we've had such good feedback from it.
Well, I'm excited about this because whilst I have done the training, I do love listening to you talk about it, and I feel like I'm going to learn lots today too.
Well, now it's time to really think about your expectations. Possibly lower them a little bit, but I am hoping that the conversation today will actually be useful. I have done a lot of research for me.
I think you know it, just like you told me I knew polyvagal. You do know this model, write about it a lot, you talk about it a lot, you share it with other practitioners, with carers, you'll be fine.
Yeah, I know. Do you know what's that thing that we always talk about, that, we have a theory and for it to be useful for us, we give it sense making, but then I'm always questioning, is it still the theory or have I just put my own interpretation and changed it slightly?
Which absolutely have, but we all do that.
Yeah,
we all adapt and change, mold, blend, bend theories to suit our practice and to help us make sense. We have to interpret it in a way that it does make sense for us. So absolutely you've done that, but we all do that with theories, is my theory.
Yeah, no, I like your theory and I agree with your theory.
Perfect.
All right, so let's talk about the DMM model. If anyone out there listening to this is an expert, please don't be upset if I do not do this well, but I will do it to the best of my ability. And Rose is right. I do talk about this theory all the time and I do write about it. Like I use it as rationale, perhaps, or even as an analysis tool in lots of behaviour support plans, but also parenting capacity assessments, care assessments.
What is it about the DMM when you did the training that you went, I like this, it makes sense and I'm going to use it?
Do you know what? It was like a light bulb went off.
Okay.
It really was. And I think that to answer your question, it was because it focuses more on behaviours, but it doesn't call them behaviours, it calls them strategies. And I think when I started to think about behaviours as a strategy, it made so much more sense to me in terms of why, thinking about this from a child's perspective, why children might do what they do and why they might, I guess, react to certain situations in the way that they do.
So it's almost, or is it almost, a model that helped you create empathy for children and young people in their strategies and making sense of that to other people instead of thinking this child's acting consciously in a really negative way that's causing harm to themselves or others. Is it a model that you went, wow, this is a way to explain that this is a behavioural strategy and because of certain things, this is how we got here. So let's have a little bit more empathy and understanding for what we're seeing as opposed to being a pure behaviouralist, interventionalist, like we just want to change a behaviour so everyone's pro-social, happy and, well behaved all the time.
To answer your question, yes, it did help me to, it did promote understanding. And it kind of was that platform, particularly when working with carers, I think, and even workers, I think, to try and understand the why.
Okay.
The why a little bit more. And I love that it's an attachment theory, and we'll talk about that in a minute, what that actually means. But I also like that it's lifelong.
Yeah, okay.
Because I think, the standard attachment theory that we all know, secure and secure attachment types, that's also lifelong, but the focus is always in children.
Well, I think we talk a lot about, don't we, children and their attachments, but absolutely there are adult attachment styles.
They are. But they're not as well known.
They're not as well known. And I think even the understanding that your adult attachments can change. We can change how we are attached as adults.
Yeah.
I don't think that's as well known either. And that our experiences throughout childhood and young adulthood shape our adult attachments.
Yeah.
Because then it shows up as who we are as practitioners, colleagues, friends, romantic partners.
Yeah.
Like it impacts us lifelong as well, doesn't it? Our adult attachment styles. But you are right, we don't often talk about that.
No, I don't think we do. I really don't think we do. And so I like this. I like this theory because it's lifelong. And because that's kind of from the outset, everyone knows this is a lifelong thing.
Right. Let's get into it.
Well, let's get into it. So this was a model that was developed by developmental psychologist Dr. Crittenden and her colleagues in around 1985. So it's been around for a bit. It's an advanced practical framework that updates standard attachment theory. I am going to be doing some reading. So stop me if it's like, stop reading, let's chat. Okay?
I will.
It's your job is to stop me from reading. I just don't want to miss anything.
Okay.
Okay. So the DMM explains how people develop specific organized strategies to protect themselves from dangers throughout their lives. The thing about those dangers is that it's not just around physical danger, it's also around emotional and psychological dangers as well. So the DMM model really does kind of explain the link between the experience of these dangers, ongoing experience of these dangers, not a one-off, but an ongoing experience of these dangers. And then the strategies that in children, because it's lifelong, so it starts in infants really, and then obviously children, the behaviours that people use to adapt to the dangers. It's all about that adaptability.
Adaptability. So are the strategies, actually, I'll withhold that question because you'll answer it.
Well, hopefully. Hang on to it in your head just in case I don't. All right, so the DMM is an integrated theory that draws on many fields, including psychology, neuroscience, and evolutionary biology to explain complex human responses. It really does expand upon the work of Bowlby and Ainsworth.
Okay.
So that's the beginning. And Crittenden, Dr. Crittenden was actually part of Mary Ainsworth's research. So she was kind of there from the beginning.
That's really cool, isn't it?
It's really cool. And do you know what? I've actually been in training that Dr. Crittenden has done, and she's quite amazing to listen to.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. My only issue was that the training, I was obviously in Australia and the training was in UK, so I had to get up at like 2 a.m.
Oh, that's dedication for you right there.
How I didn't last through the training for that very reason, but I wish that I did. I did the first few modules and I was like, I'm just too tired to do it. But one day, hopefully, we get to go to the UK.
That'd be amazing. We could go in person to the training she's delivering.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. All right, so the core of the DMM focuses on the lifelong interplay between two things, a person's physical and mental maturation, and then context. What's that face for, Rose? What are you thinking?
I'm thinking the first bit, a person's, what did you say? Physical
and mental maturation.
Yes, and their context.
Yeah.
So would we say their temperament and their personality?
In terms of maturation.
Is that what we're talking about?
Well, yeah, but we're also talking about how people develop. The impact of development,
okay,
on personality, on temperament, on cognitive ability, on emotional functioning.
Okay.
The DMM is driven by a central idea, which is the need for survival dictates behaviour. And a key principle is that exposure to danger shapes brain development and a person's protective adaptations. So that kind of goes back to that kind of known theory around trauma, doesn't it? And how trauma impacts on brain development.
Yeah.
It kind of goes back to that as well, which makes sense because it builds on the work of neuroscience. And that's kind of neuroscience, I hope. All right. DMM states that when a person needs comfort or protection from a trusted figure, like a partner, parent, or therapist, it's interesting around the therapist thing, isn't it? Anyway, we'll talk about that later. They use relation-specific self-protective strategies based on the relationship history. So what that means is that the way that you would manage a relationship in the here and now really depends on what has happened in that relationship leading up to the here and now.
In that relationship.
Yeah. Okay. Because part of the DMM, really the important bit is that we can actually have different strategies across different areas of our life and with different people.
Yeah.
So, for this person, say for mum, who's often disorganized, chaotic, has harmed me in the past, I know that I have to use strategies that inhibit my kind of emotional context. But for this person, say my teacher, I know that it's okay for me just to be who I am because they're not a threat to me, because my relational history with that person, that teacher, has proven to me that I do not have to fear them.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Definitely makes sense, because how many times do you kind of hear about children, we're still talking about children, that are different in different settings. And it's kind of normal as well, isn't it? Do you know, for everyday kids who kind of develop, in kind of normal, in a normal sense.
Yeah.
They haven't experienced trauma. They probably experienced some adverse situations, because everyone does. Yeah. But how many times do you hear a parent say, do you know what, they're an angel at school, but once they get home, they're terrible?
Yes.
And it's because this child has learned that they can actually adapt their behaviours in different settings.
And I think that's true about adults too.
Yeah, it is.
How I am socially,
Yeah,
which is awkward and withdrawn, usually.
Is that true?
If I don't know people, absolutely.
Yeah.
Versus if I'm very comfortable and with people I know, or, in the office with you, I'm very different to how I am if I, have to go to a school event with parents that I don't particularly know.
Yeah.
Completely different people.
That's true. It's not.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Some of it's clearly temperament that's slow to learn, but some of it is adaptation, because scanning for safety and for comfort, aren't you? And I guess, is it safe to be me? You've got to work all that out before. For me, I have to work that out before I just am who I am.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're very much alike in that situation. So while you were talking, I was thinking to myself, one of us has to be really good at networking, Rose, and it can't be me. I always thought it could be you, but
Maybe we're screwed.
Anyway, we're doing all right so far. So the DMM, one of the most important contributions around thinking about DMM really is that it focuses on information processing.
Okay.
Which I like.
I do too.
Because it's about how do we make sense of the experiences we've had? How do we make sense of what this relationship with this person means for me? So it really relies on that kind of, consistency and predictability of a relationship to be able to then process that sense may be. Yeah. And that predictability can be around positive or negative. So it can be predictable that this person meets my needs, or it can be predictable that this person doesn't meet my needs. Yeah. It's just around the predictability.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting. There are three different main strategy types in the DMM model. So type B is where you're kind of pretty balanced. Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of weird that it's type B, isn't it? But what that means is that you are generally honest with yourself, you integrate true information, and you understand and can identify true emotions.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's that stuff around there being nothing really hidden. You understand what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, and you actually also have genuine experiences of relationships that make sense to you.
Yep. Okay.
Type A is where you are more cognitively driven. So type A strategies rely on kind of cognitive distortion is what it's called. And what that means is that you kind of shut down or inhibit feelings, and your thoughts, your brain makes sense of whatever is happening on this cognitive level only.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think?
I'm thinking about a young girl at the moment who probably fits type A.
So these are, if you think about this, if you want to see what this looks like, these are kids who can be maybe like little robots.
Yep.
In more extreme, because they push down anything that really has this kind of feeling context.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really know how to respond in situations emotionally. They have no indication, or not indication is the wrong word, no understanding of how to respond.
Yep.
And so maybe their responses become incongruent to the context.
To the context.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, makes sense?
Does make sense.
Yeah. Type C, is where the strategies rely on distorted, often exaggerated emotions, and there's this ignoring of facts.
Okay.
Or ignoring really anything related to cognition. So the feelings take over. So type A, the brain takes over. Type C, the feelings take over.
Okay.
That's kind of the way to think about it.
Yeah.
Type B are balanced in the middle.
So I'm working in a household at the moment with two young boys, and I would say they have one child is type A and one child is type C.
Yeah.
And when I think about it in this lens, it's very easy to see how the carer is struggling.
Yeah.
In that situation, because one is so driven by by his emotions and how it feels, and just so reactive, and the other is quite robotic, and I'm never quite sure what's going on, what's happening to him. It's like so hard to read. Polite though, I'd say almost people pleasing. I'm gonna tick that box and go along. But I can't get a real. I feel like when I think about the relationship I'm trying to develop with him, I'm just flawed. I don't know how to kind of break down those walls.
Yeah. I mean, it would be tricky and tough for a carer to manage both.
In the one household.
Both in the one household. Yeah. And then you can have children that would have fallen into like the old categories, disorganized attachment, who have both type A and C.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah?
Yep.
And we'll go through what the different types mean. Look, if you're interested and you're kind of listening to this or watching this podcast, you can actually look this up. If you type in DMM, model of attachment, and go images, then then a picture of a cycle will come up that actually has all of the types. So you can kind of see where they sit.
And we'll put the link.
Yeah, we'll put the link. Well. Yeah, we'll put the link. So if you have a look at that wheel, I wish I could remember what it was called. Anyway, it's the image associated with the model. It's really handy to have a look because you'll see at the very top of the circle, you've got kind of the B types, so B1 to 2, B3, B4 to 5. And then on my right, left and right's not my thing, but on my right, you've got the C types. And it goes from C1 down to C8. And then on the left-hand side, you've got the A types, and it goes from A1 down to A8. And so, generally speaking, you wouldn't kind of see a younger child demonstrate behaviours that are kind of sitting with that A7 or A8 because that's when maturation comes in.
Right.
So there needs to be some complexity to the brain to be able to actually developmentally demonstrate strategies that sit.
Can you give me an example of what sits down there?
So A7 is around, just can't read that. Can you read that? I can't read the writing.
You have glasses on, I love it.
I know.
Delusional, idolization, externally assembled self.
Yeah. So basically you need to have some cognitive complexity
Okay.
to be able to actually even think about something in that way.
So as a younger person who has a strategy in the A's, type A strategy, what would it look like?
So because it kind of links with maturation, so you're probably, depending, if you're kind of middle childhood, you would be sitting around the A3 to 4, A5 to 6.
Okay. Compulsivity, caregiving, compliant. Self-reliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Well, we'll go through each one. But yeah. So that's something to think about as well. If you do look at that image, then you have to factor in maturation.
I'm thinking about these two young boys. Yeah. It's just kind of cementing things for me, which is actually helpful because I'm feeling stuck in my work with them.
I love this theory. I know I'm probably so far not giving it much justice when I'm speaking about it, but I love this theory.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So the DMM model states that a child's experience of attachment begins as infants and that strategy development coincides with an infant's experience of caregiving. So you can see this so clearly in babies. You can see how babies might inhibit their emotions because they've worked out that it doesn't actually go in their favour to cry or to actually demand attention. All those babies on the other side, say C babies, who are really hard to settle. And there isn't a medical reason for it. Yeah. You know what I mean? Really hard to settle, really chaotic, would have maybe demonstrate, if we're thinking about this with the old attachment lens, an anxious attachment, more so than a disorganized, but also a disorganized attachment, but an anxious attachment, that push-pull stuff.
Yeah.
I want this person close to me, but when they're close to me,
get away.
Get away. Yeah. So that's kind of the C side. The A side is this kind of like a sack of potatoes. If you ever kind of seen a baby, you would have seen so many babies, I don't know why I said it that way, who just are very limp.
Yeah.
Just kind of lie there. And there's not a developmental reason why.
Such a good, what's the word for it?
Analogy
and visual, isn't it?
Yeah.
Those babies that just...
Yeah. That don't seek eye contact when it's developmentally timed. That just kind of look out. Yeah. Don't actually engage with the caregiver at all.
Yeah, there's no, reciprocity? There's no give and take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing. But with this person, they're a little bit different. But with this person, it's consistent behaviour that I see. That baby is learning to inhibit already.
Yeah. And I think sometimes in even toddlers, I can think of some contexts where we've observed where that happens. The toddler does not seek and inhibits all of themselves really for that 2-hour contact. And then you see their caregiver, carer, whoever it is, come pick them up and they change because then there's interaction and
Yeah.
And that's adapting to different relationships and environments.
That's right.
Which is,
and keeping yourself safe. Because at some stage, that parent was a danger, either physical, emotional, psychological, or all three.
All three.
Danger to that child. And so they learned they had to adapt their context, their cognitive or emotional context, to be able to manage the relationship.
Okay. Makes sense.
I mean, honestly, children are amazing the way that they can do that. Yeah. Because this is a lifelong process, those strategies kind of stay with you. It doesn't mean that you can't change, because then that goes back again to reparative relationships and how reparative relationships can undo or can change the pathways on the brain. Yeah. But without the experience of a strong reparative relationship to reshape pathways, then the strategies would be consistent in the lifespan. But they start to look different because that's the impact of maturation.
Yeah.
So strategies refer to a cluster of cognitive, somatic, and emotional triggers that help children to manage dangers associated with caregiving relationships. And the somatic part is really important because we know our body stores experiences. So it may come out in physical ailments, failure to thrive. For babies who may be getting fed but just can't retain.
Yes.
Yep. And there isn't a medical reason for it. Yep.
Yep.
Stomach aches for toddlers.
So common, aren't they?
Yeah, tummy aches for anybody really. Headaches. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the dangers really, the way to think about dangers are that it's anything that elicits an emotional response for a child that they find difficult to manage.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the way to think about it. So if something happens and you would assume that there would be this would cause an emotional internal response, and the child either exaggerates that response or even the person, let's not just do children, the person exaggerates that response to whatever that stimuli was, or there's no response or a limited response.
Yes.
Then you kind of, that's the way to think about where this person might be sitting in terms of AC or B, the strategies. All right. Strategy development becomes more sophisticated in response to maturation and are responsive to a child's context. And I'm going back to child again because that's kind of what my note said. So I hope it's not confusing. This means that once strategies become entrenched within our internal working model, then the strategies become more robust and therefore harder to change.
But not impossible.
Nothing's impossible.
Just harder.
Yeah. Do you remember years and years ago, it was kind of, maybe 20, 30 years ago when the brain development stuff really started to come out. And at that stage, people were saying, was it 0 to 3 or 0 to 5?
0 to 5.
0 to 5. And by the time a child was 5, those pathways were set.
Yeah.
And that was scary, wasn't it?
So scary.
Yeah. And I'm glad that further research has kind of demonstrated that, no, they can always be changed. It's just that because they become so robust, then you kind of hang on to established strategies that make sense to you because they've meant that you've been safe. And it's really hard to challenge that narrative. And I feel, and I know people might be at home going, no, blah, blah, blah. But I feel, particularly for children, it's really hard to change that narrative. I think that when you kind of, as people mature, it's easier.
Yeah.
So it's easier to change it in adults. I think, just from my own experience. I've read no research about that, just from my own experience.
But I think if you think about developmentally, when, the way that we think as younger children, our formal thinking process doesn't kick in till like 10, 11 or 12. Don't quote me on it, but it's around then. So that nuanced thinking, putting a lot more, depth behind the way we're thinking, complexity, that doesn't kick in until we're up at primary school. But also, if you think about our childhood, it may be 6, 7 years of life. If their whole life experience of relationships with a caregiver has been abusive and traumatic.
Yeah.
How you understand why it's so difficult to change, because they don't have many other experiences of safety or knowledge or context behind them about what the world can be or is, apart from this scary, really horrible, abusive, situation. So you can understand why it's easier if, maybe there's research, maybe there's not, but why it's easier as adults when you've had more experiences, more opportunities, cognitively, developmentally more developed. It makes sense to me that would be so.
Yeah. I think in terms of practice, the hardest group I've kind of found in terms of challenging that internal narrative has been adolescents.
Yeah. Wow.
Which makes so much sense, doesn't it? Because that whole stage of adolescence from an Erickson view is about who am I, trying to work out your identity.
And the feelings of adolescence. Yeah. You just remember your own adolescence. Yeah. You just think this is it forever.
Yeah.
This feeling's going to last forever. This experience is going to last forever. This whole part of life, you think this is it forever. The intense emotions, they just take over and you just think, well, this is it.
Yeah.
You don't see that it's a journey and there's an other side to it.
Yeah.
It's also intense in adolescence.
It's also intense. And we know that trauma makes that intensity even more intense.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, really hard period, I think, for children that have experienced abuse and neglect, that are traumatized, that adolescence, it just is so much more complicated because of their abuse histories.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's that adolescents can become they can just adopt the identity they want at that age as well. And it just becomes them.
Or identities.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, it's the trickiest stage, I think, in terms of challenging internal narratives. Because that's really what this is about. Like if you are working with someone who has really strong type C behaviours, if your lens, you're adopting a DMM lens, is you want to actually challenge that. You want to challenge the tendency for this emotional reaction to be the first way that they react to anything.
Yeah. How would you challenge that?
I reckon that's
okay.
Let's remember that, because that's hard. I find working with type C the hardest. So the DMM model says that there are 3 clusters of strategies that are organized around strategy types. This is a little bit repeated, but I'm just going to go because otherwise I will just lose where I am. You know, it doesn't take much for me to lose my playthroughs, as we've talked about lots of times. Type B strategies fall within the normal secure range of attachment. Type A strategies develop when a child has experienced consistent caregiving characterized by the caregiver being predictable. Predictability in terms of negative interactions with the child or positive, but the caregiving has not been emotionally attuned. Okay?
Yeah.
So type A, predictable caregiving, but not emotionally attuned caregiving. So the child is needed to adapt to suit, to make sure that they are meeting the needs of the parent. Make sense?
Makes total sense.
Yes. Type A strategies occur when the child has developed a reliance on the cognitive organization of emotions and has learned to inhibit their own emotional responses because their emotions have been ignored or can cause them to experience physical or emotional threats. Yep. Children who demonstrate type C responses have experienced a caregiving environment which was unpredictable, but sometimes the carer was attuned and sometimes they weren't. But the environment was always unpredictable. That's why you can see this disorganized attachment. Sometimes I'm okay, sometimes I'm not, but I never really know what's going to happen. Yeah, makes sense?
Does make sense. I have questions, but I'll hold them to that.
Okay. Children who experience this type of caregiving develop a reliance on emotional responses over cognitive organization. Should you answer questions?
No.
Okay.
I'll remember.
As the DMM model is a lifespan model, there are peak developmental times when we would see the presentation of strategies. Generally, the strategy type A, B, or C becomes dominant by 11 months of age, and the intensity and focus of the strategy changes with maturation. So you may have a dominant style, like, you across all settings, you might be more prone to inhibit emotions, but it's much more prevalent in this setting than this setting.
Okay.
Yeah. But we generally have a dominant style because it becomes part of our personality.
Okay. And that's at 11 months that it becomes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what my notes say. And at some stage I would have researched that. So we're going with that again.
Let's do it.
All right. Let's talk about what the different strategies might be, just to be a quick summary. Again, if you've got that visual in front of you, that would be really helpful, just for you to understand. But you don't need to have the visual, because maybe you're walking and listening to this, or exercising, or driving.
I'm not a visual learner.
I'm not a visual learner. Yeah, that's true. When do you normally listen to podcasts, Rose?
Normally in the car. Or sometimes walking. I don't typically watch a podcast. I'll listen.
I mean, I never watch podcasts. I don't even watch our podcast. You could put anything up. I would not know.
Oh, challenge accepted.
Oh, no. Jeez. Yeah, I normally listen in the car as well. All right, so let's think about what you'd see in practice. So type A, they rely on logic and habit and block out emotional memories, which means really that these people can appear cool. They intellectualize drama. Yeah. They don't feel the drama. They adapt by rationalizing and distancing themselves from really any raw emotional scenario. Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Type C rely on dramatic, emotionally charged memories, because that's kind of how type C happens, because their experience of relationships has meant that they need to have exaggerated emotions to get their needs met. So they rely on that emotional context. Everything's emotional. These are people that can say things like, I wear my heart on my sleeve. Yeah. It's just how I respond. I'm an emotional person, which is fine because maybe you are, but there's a line between it being kind of normal and within the realms of normality and exaggerated and maybe turning into a bit of a type C strategy. All right. There's a lot of emotional explosions with type C, and the word explosions is a good one because that's what it looks like. There's also emotional explosions with type A.
Oh, what are those
just
like?
To confuse things. But they can very much look like a type C thing.
Yeah.
The difference is that it won't be the first response.
Yeah. Okay.
So for type A, it's when the inhibiting strategy is no longer working. Okay. So a person might find themselves in a situation where their strategy to manage danger is to inhibit, but it's not working. So they have to just be really loud and explode to get their needs met. And that need might be just for everyone to leave me alone, just to get out of my face. But in children, that's tricky because people just see this emotional response without seeing or understanding what may have happened leading up to that. But for type C, you'll know it's type C because it's the first response. Yeah. The purpose of type C really is to force a response from people around them. So type A don't want a response. They don't want anyone to kind of really acknowledge them. They just want to get on with their maintaining their own safety at whatever costs. Type C want people to meet, want people to be with them. They want to drag people to them. But when they're there, again, it's that disorganized stuff. They don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
So it just kind of escalates the dramatic response. I'm sure we can all think of people, children, adults, adolescents who would fit into these kind of two sides. And remember, and I should have said this before, this is a lens. It's not about diagnosing. It's not about, okay, well, this is what this now means. It's an additional lens for sense making. Yeah. So type B individuals are highly adaptive, able to protect themselves with minimal harm to other people. So they can just kind of get on with life. They might have high emotions. They might have low emotions. They might have, different periods of time where they might be distancing themselves. But again, it's not at the expense of other people. They can often communicate clearly, negotiate, and find mutually agreeable solutions with little need to distort information. So to distort emotional context or distort cognitive context. All right. Is that making sense?
It is.
Is it?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right, let's go through the type A strategies. So just to remind you, type A strategies are the kind of inhibiting emotional context strategies. All right, so they always involve shutting down negative feelings and relying on careful cognitive prediction to keep danger at arm's length. As the risks grow, the use of cognitive distortion increases, which is why that kind of sits in line with maturation. Yep. Okay. So the first kind of thing is A1, A2 strategies. It's called inhibited social. What's it called? What's it say?
Fuss. Is it a fuss? Facile.
Facile? Is that how you say that?
Inhibited socially facile.
Is it facile?
If that's an ILE.
It is an ILE. I don't know how to say that.
Let's go with facile. I'm the person that can't speak.
You do. Okay, let's get back to this. All right, so let's start with A1, A2. And this is, usually what you'd see in babies. This is usually kind of around that age. Of course, it can be any age, but this is where you first start to see it. So it's where a child really inhibits their emotional response. Go back to that sack of potatoes. Yeah. A3 and 4, it's kind of where you'll see some compulsive caregiving or compulsive compliance. So compulsive caregiving is that people-pleasing stuff. It's where you might see a kid or an adult kind of use behaviours where they are just trying to keep the peace. At all costs, let's keep the peace. Let's not get dramatic about this. Let's not get emotional about this. I'm going to do whatever I need to do just to please you. Compulsive compliance is all in the name. It's where that child or adult is just overly compliant, not normal compliance, which we all dream for at times as parents, but overly compliant children. Yeah. The other part of that A3, A4 strategies is that, because this starts with childhood, we'll talk about this in terms of children again. Children take excessive responsibility for the actions of other people. So let's put this in context. So say I'm a kid and I may be being physically harmed by, say, my parent. Yeah.
How old are you?
Just say I'm 10.
Yep.
Then the way I'm going to rationalize that is I'm going to say, this was my fault because I didn't do such and such to keep that person happy.
Yep.
That's what that looks like. A5 and 6, it's around being compulsively self-reliant. So think about that if we think about that from the other attachment lens, really that's about I'm an island, no one can touch me.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's around, the strategies are around the rejection of help or dependency at all costs.
Of course. Do it all myself.
Yeah.
I don't need anyone.
I don't need anyone. That's right. And then we go to A7, A8, and that's where it's kind of like delusional. You become delusional. And it's characterized by a deep cognitive distortion, which can look like idealization that borders on delusion to other people.
And then makes sense why that's much later.
Yeah.
Maturation.
Yeah, it's much later.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have questions about those? Do we want to talk about them as we go, or do you want me to talk about all the strategies and then we can have a conversation?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. All right. So then we move to C strategies. And these are known as affective and coercive strategies. Okay. Whereas A strategies are known as cognitive and compulsive strategies. Yep. Okay. So type C strategies are emotional and they are very coercive. And they're intended to be coercive because remember, it's about getting people to do and behave in the way you need them to. Yeah. They split, exaggerate, and alternate between intense emotional displays to manipulate others into providing the care or meeting the need. They can alternate between two extremes. So we've got kind of strategies around C1 and 2, which is around threatening, disarming. And it is a very normal strategy seen in infants and adults who maintain a strong enthusiasm for life. I don't know what that means. Let's get rid of that.
Maintain a strong enthusiasm for life.
Let's not do that. All right, let's get back to. So they alternate between two extremes. Those extremes being they can blame other people for their predicament, for whatever's happening, or they become being very victimized.
Yeah.
Yeah. So either you're at fault, you're the reason this is happening, or nobody is here protecting me. My needs are not being met. Nobody is meeting my needs.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So C1 to C2, it's around emotional behaviors that are intended to threat or disarm somebody. And that's really what it is. Like if you've got, think about this from a baby. Yeah, you've got, say, 9-month-old, and they are experiencing a really strong C1, C2 kind of strategy, behavioral strategy. Then these are the kids that are going to just be screaming and destroying for the sake of screaming and destroying when they're internally triggered.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that means if I'm really loud and I'm really, really bossy and I'm really like annoying, people will not hurt me. That's what that's about. Disarming. So that's where you might be. So threatening would be blame, sit within that blame category. Disarming would sit within that victimized category. So I'm going to act coy. I'm going to be helpless. I'm going to do what I have to do. I'm going to try and, we said this in like toddlers, I'm going to try and get you to like me.
Yeah.
Because that way you'll meet my needs. I mean, we see that across the whole age group.
I say I can see it in adolescents too.
You can see it in adults across the lifespan, but it tends to come, that's obviously, if we're talking about babies, that's when it starts to show. C3 and 4, aggressive sits within that blame category. Feigned helplessness sits within the victim category.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of aggressive. It's just a build from the threatening. It's big behaviours, it's big emotions, it's escalations to actually get what I want.
So is it possible if my big emotion first is always aggressive and that's not working, then I switch to the victimization?
Yes, that's how it works.
Yeah.
So, that is how it works. But you can have, the opposite can be true. So you can have someone whose first response is to appear helpless. And when that doesn't work, then they come out swinging.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah, we've seen that.
Yep.
God, I can name so many people that I can think about who use that strategy. Yeah. If you're not going to help me, then I'm just going to destroy you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. C7 and 8. Again, I like the A7 and 8 strategies. This kind of is what you always see in adulthood. You wouldn't really see this in childhood. And that's kind of menacing, sits with the blame.
Yeah.
And it's just a more intense kind of threatening, aggressive kind of pathway. Paranoid sits with the victim. That fits too, doesn't it?
It does fit too. I'm thinking about parents who sit in this strategy and their parenting of their children, and then also their interaction with service providers and other systems.
Yeah. Oh my God, yes. And you can see, like that, you can see why they've needed to particularly the victim stuff.
Yes.
You can see why that strategy has needed to help them understand their life. But it's so damaging.
To them, but also to their children.
Oh, and to anybody.
Anyone, but but especially their children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. All right, then we've got combined and pathological strategies. And this is AC combined strategy. So this is where you get an interplay of both. And it really does kind of sit down under that kind of psychopathy. Psychopathy, that's the word. Yeah. So this occurs when a person simultaneously uses complex type A and type C strategies, often seen when danger requires conflicting adaptive mechanisms. It's kind of marked by an integration of false positive emotion with false information. So that kind of combined, how did you say it? Psychopathy?
Psychopathy.
Yep. There's a distortion of emotional and cognitive. What's the word? Strategies, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I've only ever worked with 2 diagnosed psychopaths. That, that's psychopathy, right?
Yeah.
And I think about those 2, they were men, adult men. And absolutely, when I think back about what I would have said behaviours before this morning, their strategies, and just the cycle of those strategies and the intensity of those strategies.
Yeah. Keep in mind though that because we're talking about this from an attachment lens, so there's that relational interplay that needs to kind of happen for this to form. That might be different to say someone who is a psychopath from birth, whose relationships.
Yeah, I don't think these 2 were psychopaths from birth. I think this is psychopathy when I think about their childhood and their early adulthood and their relationships and their attachments. Absolutely, it would have been through their experiences.
So they would have been strategies to manage the environments they were in and the relationships they had. Which kind of, we think about this from another lens, I think the kind of common view is that sociopaths are made, psychopaths are born.
Yeah, I don't know that I subscribe to that.
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting.
It is interesting.
But I think that sociopaths are made stuff could be this.
Yeah.
Because usually those sociopaths have had pretty crappy lives.
All I know was it was very unpleasant to work with those two men.
Yeah.
I do not wish to work in that space with anyone with those diagnoses in the future, because that pushed me to, both times pushed me to my limits of professionalism and the personal impact on me. But
Yeah.
don't want to interested in it, but don't really want to practice in that area.
So I've done a lot of training around DMM. I hope it sounds like I have. It might not, but just in case you're worried, I've done a lot of training around DMM. And what I remember really clearly, the first training I ever did about it, the trainer at the time was saying, Clive Bain, who is amazing, was saying that you can have this kind of, say it again, psychopathy. You can use some of those strategies if in everyday work experience, like workplaces, if you require those skills to manipulate the environment you're in to get the needs met.
I would assume that's a lot of CEOs and
that's what he was saying, and politicians.
Yeah, yes,
that's what he was saying. And I was like, wow, it makes so much sense.
Yeah. Oh, it does. You can see it right now. I can see lots of executive CEOs, and that's those strategies that they use.
Yeah. So what the DMM argues is that what looks disorganized is actually a highly structured, complex attempt, we're still talking about AC strategies, to use contradictory strategies simultaneously to manage severe or confusing danger. Does that make sense? Yeah. That's what it's saying. So the DMM is saying that for why can't I say that? Psychopathy. Yeah. It is a highly structured cognitive process, an emotional process to distort what you need to distort so that other people actually see the experience or the environment, or see whatever it is you want them to see.
They're seeing the world through the picture and buying it.
Yeah.
And when those people don't buy the picture you're selling, that's when you see the strategies, I would think, come out, that are quite dangerous for others.
I agree. So there's lots of different, so DMM, because it's a lifespan model, there's actually different assessment tools that you can do training in that help you to actually do DMM assessments. And they start from birth. So the one from birth to 15 months is called the Infant Care Index.
Yep.
I did some training in that with an amazing trainer. Great training. The next one kind of starts at 16 to 60 months, and that's the preschool assessment of attachment. That's what it's called. And then school-aged assessment of attachment is from 6 to 12 years. And then the DMM adult attachment interview is 25 years plus. So I wonder what happens from 12
to 25.
Don't know.
Might be another one. Can I ask, if you did one of those assessments, is it to diagnose whether you're A, B, or C, or is it what's the outcome of those assessments?
So I guess, I guess it would be around understanding the emotional and the cognitive context of this person more. I guess, I don't know, I guess you could diagnose somebody, but what would be the point? The way that I haven't used an assessment properly because I haven't actually finished any of the training to that point of having my assessments.
You're not
marked. I'm not accredited at all because I get to that point and I stop, which is really silly, isn't it?
Honestly. It actually is, because I'm sure it invests a lot of time and money.
I just love learning about it. And looking at the tools.
Yeah.
So the way that I've talked about DMM in the different assessments that I've had is that I'm really clearing the language that this person's behaviours are consistent with.
Okay.
Yeah. But I know that from a legal setting, from a therapy setting, it's just around understanding this person's context so that you can then direct and target the best supports required.
Okay.
From a legal setting, I remember this being talked about in the training that I did once. It's about understanding the criminality, perhaps, and why the person might have behaved in the way that they have. What's driven that? It's just a different lens, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's pretty much all I've got to talk about.
So can we use this next bit? I want to describe to you these two young men.
Yeah, all right.
And you tell me because I am stuck.
Yeah.
And I think one is type C and one is type B.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah, let's try it.
All right. So I'm working in a household with two, and they're adolescents. So 13 and 15.
Yep.
They also have another brother in the household who is younger. And they're in care with family members and have been since the age of 4 and 3.
So, sorry, which one is the more volatile one? The type C one?
The 13-year-old.
The 13-year-old. And the younger one is the inhibiting one?
No. The 13-year-old is the younger one. The 15-year-old is the inhibiting one.
Okay, sorry. Yep.
Okay. So we'll call them Dylan and Tom. So Dylan is 15 and Tom is 13.
Okay.
I'm doing therapeutic life story work with these two young men, and they're both in care with family members in the same household, and then there's a younger brother again.
Mm-hmm.
So Dylan, who's 15, is very polite, pleasant. On the surface, the interactions in sessions look compliant.
Overly compliant?
Not overly compliant. On some occasions, they've been overly compliant. Yeah. But generally, I just say compliant. I'm polite. It feels like he's ticking the box. When we talk about feelings, it was very. We did 2 sessions on feelings. So let's name some feelings. Let's describe some behaviours you might see with some feelings. When was the last time you felt these feelings? I felt like it was a performance. So he could name them, but there was no emotions in the whole session. Like, it was talking about the time I felt really sad, was a pretty trivial matter. And I say that because I know his history and I knew the recent history, and I could have thought, I would have guessed 3 incidences that he might have talked about in the last 12 months that were actually really sad. You know, the death of someone in the family, the cutting of contact with the natural mother, and the disappearance of the natural father. No, absolutely not. It was about friends. You know, someone ate my pie, really, and I felt sad.
I'd be sad if someone ate my pie. Unless I didn't like it. I'm hungry. Sorry. Yeah.
He watches the clock, but stays in session.
So he's very compulsively compliant then, because he doesn't want to be there by the sound.
No. And the relationship, so in session is the primary carer, family member. And that relationship, my view of that is that the carer quite favours this child over the other two. And I would say provides more attention, but I don't think there's any emotional attachment there. So what complicates this picture is beautiful home, all their physical needs are met, and all of those boxes are ticked with extracurricular activities, tutoring, amazing schools, great clothes. Do you know what I mean?
But emotional attunement is not there.
No emotional attunement. A state of deep desire from the moment this family member saw this sibling group was being abused and neglected, that they wanted them in their care. And there's a whole backstory of conflict and conflict with agencies, but also the natural parents to try and create safety for the boys. I would say then the boys were placed in their care, and we're still talking about that 10, 11 years later from the carer's point of view, as this is what's happened to me. But no emotional attunement. This is actually this was the experience of these boys. So when we're trying to do life story work, and I'm trying to when we tried to do the timeline, like it was just, because we start from today and go back. So an example, it was halfway through this year. 2025, and I said, well, you've just had a birthday because we've sat in silence for 5 minutes. How about we start with your birthday? Okay. I turned 15.
Have you clarified with him, like, have you fed back the way he presents, and what does he say?
Well, we did a whole session on the iceberg, so what's seen and what's not seen.
Yeah.
And that was probably the most, my word, successful session, because I feel like I got a little bit more in that session than any other. So I will refer back to, am I just seeing the tip of the iceberg here? I'm curious what's going on underneath, because this is what I'm seeing from you. You've looked at the clock 5 times. You keep checking your phone. We have long pauses, and I don't know answers. So I'm wondering what's happening. What can I do? What do we need?
Because I guess it's worth finding out whether that's just because they don't want to be there and they don't feel safe there, and that probably could be around the relationship perhaps with you, but probably more so with the caregiver. Or is it that they just don't know? They don't have that really strong emotional context because it's always being inhibited. Do you know what I would do if I was you? I would draw a box and I would say very clearly, tell me what feelings are in this box. What do you keep hidden? And they're going to say nothing. And then you can say, if it were me, I would say, do you know, I'm really curious about that because I've read your file, as you know, and you've gone through some pretty big stuff that I think would cause a bit of a feeling. The other way to approach it is you could actually get them to think more about the body and actually have a feeling and talk about maybe just generic feelings, anger. Where do you feel anger in the body?
I haven't tried that.
Is it
very successful.
Yeah. So then do the box.
Do the box.
And because if this kid is kind of sitting with this in A, then they're going to be intellectualizing their feelings because that's what happens. And so your best bet is to come out and just say it.
Yeah.
That's what I would do, because you've kind of gotten to know this kid a little bit, so you know that they can manage that conversation. Of course, you need to make sure they can manage a conversation before you would do that. But for type A, for children that might be more A, and you're trying to work out whether it is an A thing or whether it's just, like they don't feel safe or something else, then the way to test that is by intellectualizing emotions. Okay, because that's what they do. So that makes sense to them.
All right, I'm going to try that.
Does that make sense?
Very helpful because, the sessions, the sessions are tough because we can do some work. Another good session we had where we talked about safe and unsafe parents, but I say it was good because I feel like it was that intellectual stuff. So whilst we sat there and said, he said, I don't know what an unsafe parent is. I was like, inside, come on. You absolutely do know. And then, I tried to relate it to movies and books. Have you read any books or watched any movies where you've seen unsafe parenting? And eventually we got to some ideas, but it was very intellectualized and distant, which was fine. But things like, well, I didn't know that the name of those things. So, when it's hard to, like, are you pulling my leg, or are you telling me at 15 you actually don't know what physical abuse is?
Yeah.
When you've experienced it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it could be that they don't know. If it's a true type A, then they might not know, because inhibiting stuff takes a lot of energy. And it doesn't leave you open to learn new things because your brain's really busy. You're pushing stuff down.
Yeah. So that makes sense, because I did feel like I left and I thought, and when I'm writing the notes, I'm like, really? When you start, was that whole session just a waste of time for that young person? Or do they generally not know, did not know any of the emotional abuse, physics? They couldn't name it, but when I describe some of the actions that sit with that, we're like, oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Drew an amazing picture.
Yeah.
And, really thought about, when you say intellectualize it, even the layout of the drawings on the wallpaper, it's well considered.
Yeah.
The colours, the placement, all of it. The artwork is amazing.
Yeah.
But that, I feel like I'm pulling teeth or just doing a lot of psychosocial education.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe that's what this person needs to, if they don't know. So it's going to be you trying to work that out first. Because if it's about the fact that they are just being overly compliant, they actually just don't want to do this, but they feel like they have to, then you're going to approach that in a different way.
True. So then the younger brother,
13-year-old.
He is so, I would say, I walk in and I do think, oh, I wonder what kind of mood we're going to be in, is what I think. And it's either really loud, aggressive yelling at the carer.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm talking like he says horrendous things to his carer.
Right.
You did this to me. It's that blame.
Oh, the blame.
You know, really loud, aggressive in her face, slamming the fridge door, throwing stuff in the sink.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, hello. It's almost like it's now a bad time, but this is a general occurrence. It's not a one-off. I see this repeatedly.
How does that person, sorry, what was his name? Tom. How does Tom calm down? And what does calming down look like?
So
how long does it last?
It takes a long time for Tom to calm down. So I've had 3 sessions where I just said, there's no, and I sat for the hour just to be predictable and to try and promote safety. But we have not, I just watched him yell, scream, throw things, verbally berate and abuse his carer. And then pace, withdrawal, come back. 3 times I've sat in the household for the hour and it said very clearly, Tom, we're not going to do session today. I can see you're really upset. Tried to co-regulate with him and that hasn't worked. So I'm just going to sit here. If you need me, if you'd like to, we always play a card game. If you'd like to play cards, I'm very happy to do that with you, but we're not going to talk about anything today. 2 occasions he's ended up laying on the lounge just before, in the last 15 minutes. And I always say to him, I'm going to go now. I really hope you're okay. This is after checking in. Do you need anything from me? I'm going to go now. I really hope you're okay. And I'll come back in a fortnight. Yeah. So I've kept that predictable, trying to be predictable and reliable and consistent with him. But he is very, very emotional and it's so external. The carer says can happen nearly daily, like large outbursts. Interesting though, in a recent period of school holidays, he went with the carer to another relative's house for 2 weeks without the other siblings. And in that household was a number of neurodivergent children. And she come back and said he was amazing. It was a different Tom. He was patient, he was kind. And that's, I wonder about the settings and in different settings, you know, how you talked about those strategies.
Yeah.
But I would say when I look at the carer's emotional attunement to Tom also.
But the caregiver went with him to the different setting?
Yep.
So then you'd still expect him to react because he's reacting to her.
Except she was there but went out. So went out for days with another family member and Tom was left with the other children and a different family member. So there were large periods every day, he told me, where she wasn't present.
So then it does sound like he's reacting to that relationship. So there is what I would start to work on.
Yeah.
I would start to actually explore that relationship.
Great, because that's what I've started to do. Because I think the physical needs being met so well is a little bit of a mask.
Yeah.
And it's taken me a while to realise, hang on a minute, I actually think, and there's another carer in the household, another adult in the household.
Yeah.
And when we talked about, with both boys, I did a session where we talked about who was in the household, and I used the bear cards with Dylan, not with Tom. I can't remember exactly what I did with Tom, but what was interesting, both boys said when they talked about the other caregiver, one was he runs away and one was he's never here. So can't be emotionally available if you're not home.
No.
And so I have observed that caregiver to always be either, you know, mowing the lawn, in a shed, fixing something, doing an errand, always out of the house.
Right.
And the caregiver that does the sessions, the bear cards that Dylan picked for that caregiver was something like bossy, like a bee, a buzzing bee, always around and bossy and at me. And the other, that was Dylan, and I think Tom picked annoying and eye rolling with things like that. Like,
yeah, right.
Like I'm just
okay.
a bit of a problem here.
Yeah, okay.
And then there's this third child who I don't work with.
Yeah.
And I hear him throwing things in his bedroom, slamming doors.
Right.
He'll walk through and try and want to be part of the session. And when he's redirected, then he will throw things, yell, scream, swipe things off the table on his way. It's such an interesting household.
But it sounds like there's some clear attachment dysregulation for everyone in that household.
That's kind of, what I've been thinking the last couple of weeks.
But also I think your strategy in terms of the way you're managing Tom is exactly what I would do, because you have to, you do have to have those clear boundaries around engagement. And that it's okay if you don't want to engage right now. It's okay. You'll just still stay there and you'll be predictable and consistent, and you will build that relationship that way. Look, I think at some stage it would be cool if you could get to a point where you could teach some coping strategies that are positive, like to calm the body and the brain, but that's going to be tricky with him. But not impossible, because he's going to have to learn coping strategies, because you can't. It's not the way you could behave in the real world.
And I worry, what does it look like in the next, he's just 13. What does it look like in 14, 15, 16, 17, 18? Especially if the relationship with the carers remains what I think it is.
Yeah.
I think, what does it look like for him in the future? And how does that then go for him and his life trajectory? Because I don't think anyone is actually helping him manage all of those emotions. He's recently also got some diagnoses, and so now we've got a diagnosis, and that's great. But I'm like, well, what does that change for him, and what does that change for this household? Because you've got 2 diagnoses. Excellent. What does that mean?
Well, it doesn't mean anything unless it comes with an increased service provision. But I guess, I was just having this conversation this morning with somebody in supervision. I just always think that our role is about always promoting how people can live in the world in a safe way, emotionally, physically, psychologically safe way. And so any strategies that you can kind of slip into practice, I think is a good idea to help him to regulate himself, to learn that regulation.
Yeah. They're so tough.
Yeah, it sounds tough.
Such tough sessions.
Yes. I don't envy you at all. All right. I reckon that's it. What do you think?
Well, I did this training over 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's not a model that rolls off my tongue. I think about it often and I go, it's so wordy, and
it's very wordy,
and it turns me off. But I think the way that you went back through it today, and as a lens to think about these 2 boys, because I do feel so stuck in my intervention with them. And, I'm sitting there, especially with the older one, thinking, should I just call this? Because I was struggling for a while to think, are we just so people-pleasing, so compliant, we're ticking a box, and am I actually doing harm here? Because this relationship between the caregiver and him started off and was purported to be amazing and really strong. And I think there was a mask of that at the beginning, but as we've gone on and it's harder to hold that.
Yeah.
I started to think, I'm so in over my head here, and then with all the explosions that happen too in the household when I'm in there from the other 2, it's very chaotic.
Yeah.
But it has helped me reframe that and think about how I actually, maybe instead of thinking, how do you not know what physical and emotional abuse is, or when I've shown, So that's helped me think about how I can finish the intervention knowing that, I've got that box exercise, that's been helpful. And if it is that, then I can provide some more psychosocial education, some more narrative to help him process his life story.
And to help him to understand that he inhibits, because he might not know that he does that. He might not know. So when you do the box activity, you might have to actually be quite directive in your question, and that's okay.
Yeah. And then I think it also helps explain in a household with 2 other siblings who are quite external. Kind of makes sense, because I've been thinking, you've been raised by the same 2 caregivers here.
Yeah.
Since quite young. You've been in this stable placement. What I guess also I'm like, why are the strategies different for the 3 children? But obviously it's their temperament and personality as well. And you said up to 11 months,
Yeah.
that's when there's a preference anyway. So that's helped because I was thinking I'm missing something. Same household, same carers, I'd say emotionally unavailable to all 3 kids.
Yeah.
Why are 2 so external and 1 such a people pleaser? And on the surface, the school writes glowing reports but it's about his compliance,
Yeah.
his attitude to help and
Yeah.
So that's helped me, Frank. So I think it was helpful.
I'm really glad. I hope that for all of you listening, I hope it's been useful. I hope it's been helpful. I hope I haven't confused you. I love DMM. I use it all the time, as you know. I use it in therapy. I use it in assessments. I use it in consults. I use it in care education. I use it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's clearly valuable. So
for me, it's a valuable lens.
Yeah.
It's a valuable lens. And that's all you can kind of do is just, change our lenses to suit the context.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not been, I don't love it as much as you because I, have found it a model that I've struggled to really understand and then implement and talk about to others. And that's fine too. But I just think this episode is more about widening our lenses and highlighting different models, frameworks.
Yeah,
so that's good in itself.
Cool. All right, well, let's finish. What do you reckon? Ready?
Yep.
Okay. So that brings us to the end of another episode of Relational Practice, a Social Work podcast. Thank you for joining us for today's discussion.
We do appreciate your continued support of this podcast. Please follow the podcast, subscribe to our social media, and tune in the next fortnight. Until then, stay safe and remember to practice relationally.
Cool. See ya. Bye, guys.